Hello, everyone. Welcome to the monthly EVerest Technical Steering Committee. What a long name. Yeah, we are the software stack for charging all vehicles. We'll try a slightly different format this time, starting with the highlights of the month. So there is payment terminal support coming along the way. We had a really nice EVerest summit 2 weeks ago in Germany, and we had quite some roadmap discussions. We'll present the summary of this. Right now, there's a Testival going on in Valencia from CharIn, and I heard great news on some back channels that they've been able to charge cars with ISO 11811-20 with a new native stack with an EVerest. So it's nothing Python, nothing Java. It's really targeted for productive use, as is, all open source. Yeah, and we'll do some voting on potential new EVerest Technical Steering Committee members. And if you want to find out more about the project EVerest, there's a link somewhere here below popping up on YouTube. Feel free to click it, watch it, and yeah, let's get started. But before we dive too deep into it, there could be, and probably are, competitors here in the room. So please behave, check out our antitrust policy. And if you want to learn more about EVerest, you also find a link to our GitHub documentation here. Okay, so what is new? What happened in the last weeks? And maybe let's start with Holger from Qwello. Can you give us an update about the Rust support going on?
Sure. So my name is Holger. I'm from Qwello. I will actually later also talk a bit about me and my company in more details. But for now, just talking about Rust. So we from Qwello, we want to contribute Rust support to EVerest. And our stated goal here is we want to make Rust the preferred choice for writing productive, worthy EVerest modules. So this basically means it should be very fast, low boilerplate, very high type safety. You should not be able to express illegal states, and hence this should reduce a lot of bugs. Some of them will be completely impossible to write even with Rust, also through the support in the language. It should feel nice, so it should be an idiomatic development experience. And of course, there should be perfect interoperability with all of the other EVerest modules out there. And that also means 100% of feature support. So Rust should be as good as C++ to write EVerest modules in. We also have a non-goal, and the non-goal is actually we don't plan to have the Rust support to be good for explorative or debug modules. So when I mean debug modules here, I mean debug modules for the framework EVerest itself, right? It is meant to actually really write production modules that you would use to run your own hardware with, right? Since the last time we talked about this, we actually made pretty good progress with integrating into the existing cMake build system of EVerest. And we added nearly all features. The only thing that is still missing at this point in time is support for configurations and multi-slot connections. We still consider it experimental, though we have started building production code with it within Qwello already.
Thank you, Holger. So, and you're also doing something about payment terminal support. Maybe you can summarize this as well.
Right. So actually, Qwello is using the payment terminals that also PIONIX is working against right now, the CVIN series. We have them in quite a few hundred devices in the field at this point in time, and we serve a lot of transactions over them already. So we have production hardened code for it, which is not EVerest aware, but it's basically a library that we're using in our existing system. And we plan to open source this and make this available within EVerest as an EVerest module. But there's also other work going on. Actually, PIONIX also works on the ZVT support internally. The library libzvt is started with an integration target of Q4. And we believe that it is beneficial at this point in time to continue both efforts and have a choice in EVerest, essentially.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. So then maybe a quick recap about the EVerest Summit. 2 weeks ago, we organized at PIONIX the first dedicated EVerest event. It started with the idea of bringing some developers from ChargeByte, from PIONIX, and from Alphen together on one site. And then okay, let's open it up, inviting even more people. And we ended up with more than 70 people on site. We had 3 keynotes from different companies. We had different workshops on how to build a DC charger, how Plug&Charge works with EVerest, and how Plug&Charge works in general. A roadmap workshop, we'll talk about that in a bit. And also like giving for the newbies introduction to EVerest. And there was a lot of discussion going on. We had in parallel hacking on the day before on a car, on some charger component testing. Great fun. We could have invited way more people, but there was just too little time to organize that. So we had to make a cut short some days before the event. Next time it will be bigger. We're already planning more, but more about that later in this deck. And I think the most, let's say, for this round, interesting outcome of this EVerest Summit was the roadmap workshop. We did that twice. Once, well, basically with 2 different groups that different people can participate that. Because all workshops have been running in parallel. And so we put stickers on the windows, we all shuffled them, and we did some exercise afterwards to summarize those 2 workshops, sort them into, let's say, swim lanes and prioritize them. So this is kind of a timeline, but without a dedicated timescale. So from top to bottom, you see the different swim lanes. Let's go through them. The most left things are the most important ones, the most right, people do care less. ISO 15118-20 is obviously very important for many people. Also, the core profiles and the security extensions. ISO 15118 as a standalone library is important, and the good news for both of this is it's happening right now. We come to that in a minute, but there's something to be released. Then TLS downgraded to TLS 1.2 was often discussed because some of the silicon used in the car isn't supporting TLS 1.3 yet. And yes, it's non-standard compliant, but you know how our industry works. Everyone is derivating from the standards. And EVerest is thus there like a bubble fish to capture all of those weird specialties. So yeah, probably we'll also do that route as an extra option. Grid codes for V2G was pushed quite a little bit. VAS, simple example and guideline. Wireless charging, which is also used for pantograph or for inductive charging. So we looking into that, I think it's ISO 15118-8. There might be something going on. And the megawatt charging system, yes, everyone wants that, but it's a bit out because I think all the protocols are not really finalized. So important, but not urgent. On OCPP front, yeah, for sure, everyone looks at OCPP 2.01 and a bit later 2.1. I think 2.1 is to be officially released next year, October, so 2024. Good news is, you will see in our roadmap, we're working on that kind of already. So maybe it will be even there before the official release. Then OCPP sign command, another extensions, and low priority in OCPP local proxy. The idea is if you have multiple charger on site, that an EVerest-based charger could utilize other non-EVerest chargers, let's say as slaves, and do energy management also on behalf of them and also steer them remotely for the energy side. And therefore you have to implement OCPP server side on an EVerest charger. Other features, German calibration law that might be biased because the event was in Germany, even though there have been a lot of non-Germans in the room, from Netherlands, from France, Greek, Italy, yeah, and I think a couple of more countries. So anyway, that was wished quite a bit. Direct payment is always a topic, especially around Europe, that you can do credit card payment. All the reliability, home energy management system integration, HEMS. Yeah, you want to charge solar energy if you're in the home space. Idle power consumption of charging poles should go down. I think there are some, at least European Union requirements, which limit the idle power. Then integration of stationary storage for high-performance chargers. So if you have a big charger park, maybe you want to place there some big batteries that you not have to have a so big grid connection, and they would love to connect that as well. Then other data buses in the back end of EVerest instead of MQTT. Actually, it's prepared for that. We had also some serious discussion already with someone who want to have D-bus here. We don't think it's, so yes, it's work, but it should not be a big problem. And it's also low priority. So if anyone is onto that, happy to do though. So we had a lot of feedback on documentation. A lot of people want to have easier onboarding, improved more documentation, simple setup build. They want to have tutorials, better Docker containers, documentation, how to build your own support packages, and in general, how to code drivers for different hardware modules. Like, let's say you're a power module supplier. How do you enable that for EVerest? And at least on those, I can say, like, from PIONIX side, we're working on that. I also know that Shankari and team, I think, is working on that. We'll come to that in a second. Simulated testing suite by modules, so you can test modules more independently. Definition of done was often asked, like, okay, when is actually a module done? If you look at OCPP, I think OCPP will be never done. So you have to zoom in to define when this is, like, so more fine grain, and in general, more tests. And software bomb was mentioned. I think we're not that bad. We can generate software bombs, but I think we can make it more visible. Yeah, and then there was a lot of internationalization requirements, like UK regulations on smart charging, California regulations, certification for US, Asia, and Asia was asked. And then a bit lower priority, all the Asian non-CCS standards. And I think also there, I'm currently exploring with a couple of companies if they want to donate CharIn 2.0 code. So from my point of view, this will happen next year. Yeah, let's see if someone can help us that. Okay, so much about the roadmap. So let's continue with what's actually going on in the code. Also, Pete, Kai, do you want to explain something?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as always, work on OCPP, especially 2.0.1 is continuing. Yeah, the last couple of days we've focused a bit on security event notifications as well as things like the secure firmware update. There have been some improvements to the device model initialization, and I think also a bit triggered by the CharIn Testival this week. There's been a bit more work going on the certificate management for ISO 15118 and Plug&Charge. And yeah, during all of this, we're continuously testing with the OCPP testing tool. And apparently we're above 50% passing there. Some test cases, it's really minor things, and other test cases, it's basically not started yet. So yeah, but I think this will relatively quickly improve.
Right, and just to say that, so on OCPP 1.6, we are green on all the test tools. So this is just the test coverage on the explicit 2.0 side of things. Yeah, thanks. ExiGen. Moritz.
Yeah, a little bit about the ChargeByte contribution. So first of all, we're getting a bit of traction. That means GitHub issues are coming in, but also indicating that people are using it and are happy to use it. So a little bit of feedback from that. Issues coming in also means a little bit of bugs. Well, first of all, we added the fragment coder for the Plug&Charge signature feature. Those of you who are aware of how those Plug&Charge messages are formed will understand what that is for. It needs to be available for that. I'm still in progress on the loop implementation for the large arrays. This will reduce the code size significantly even, and we've noticed a code size reduction which OpenV2G isn't doing. So some of the code is like reduced by 10% of the total code base. We are still constantly bug fixing. Although last month we reported that we were quite safe with all those streams we had. Some of these users, which I mentioned above, are posting issues, and we're looking at them and fixing them on and on. So you've seen a few fixes coming in on the repository recently, and one small fix which affects two data types in -20 is still pending. We'll do that when we are staffed fully again next week. And then, as I mentioned in last month's monthly meeting, we have several open things which are sort of on the midterm roadmap, which we want to see fixed in the future by ourselves and the community. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Moritz. On ISO 15118-20, Kai, do you want to cover that as well?
Yeah, I can try, but I think we said most of that already. We're testing at the CharIn Testival. That's why nobody is here that can actually talk about this in more detail. But what I've heard is that it's going quite well. And parallel to that, we started adding this EVSE security module that uses our lib EVSE security into the EVSE V2G module, so that the certificate handling there is handled better, say. And in other news, our ISO 15818 library is now public. This is a library that targets the development of ISO 15818-20 in C++. But yeah, this is obviously still early stages, but I think work there is progressing quite quickly as well.
Yeah, and if you look onto the library, it looks like there's only a README file, so you have to switch branches to see the actual code. It's not yet on main. Thank you, Kain. EVerest Framework, also you.
Yeah, one thing we noticed, more and more over the last couple of weeks is that startup times were basically really terrible if you had like multiple modules loaded, and this is actually just a really trivial bug, because we when we load modules, we have this manager process, and this manager process does all the validation of the type definitions if they're okay against the schema. But accidentally we did this again and again in every module. So basically we had a lot, and this whole schema validation is relatively expensive, especially in like bigger files. We're talking in hundreds of milliseconds there on some hardware. And yeah, make sure that this only happens once improves startup times of EVerest dramatically. On some hardwares we've seen with like a typical configuration that you need for ISO 15818 charging session, like startup times drop from like a minute to 10-15 seconds. So that's actually very nice that this has been merged. And yeah, and Holger already said basically everything that is there to know about the Rust support work that's ongoing.
Thank you. So EVerest Core release. You're also the release manager, Kai. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no worries. As always, the release will be released probably in the next couple of days, maybe even on Halloween, who knows. That's why I added the little pumpkin up there. And yeah, there's just basically a list of pull requests that went in this month. We had some issues with the charger state machine if certain events came in very fast succession, and that has been fixed. We have a new driver module, I think for a power meter, but I'm not sure. There. Then one of our colleagues actually got it working with Clang again, also building it with Clang. We're now persisting certain states during an OCPP reset. Some of you that have been using EVerest with OCPP and smart charging probably saw these maximum number of trading rounds reached errors on their command line when using that feature. That has also been fixed in this release. If you want to try out Plug&Charge, there's now a software in the loop config there. We are now able to report the boot reason over the system interface. This is used in OCPP to basically notify the CSMS of why we restarted. Things like when we installed a firmware update, or when there was like an application reset, things like that. This packet sniffer module crash, that's something, that has also been fixed in preparation for the CharIn Testival. This is like a debug module, and also for this Testival, we extended the API to basically give you all the logging messages from the high-level charging processes, so you can get a log of all the messages that the EVSE or the car sends, and this can then be used in applications to show that to the user whilst testing. Yeah, that's basically it.
Thanks a lot. So new TSC memberships. So first, let me explain what the Technical Steering Committee, or the TSC, is. So you are here in the monthly Technical Steering Committee call, but there are also other ways to interact with the community. I mean, there's weekly engineering calls. You will find that on the mailing list, on the calendar, where we discuss progress, bugs, pull request, architecture. You can use the mailing list. You can use GitHub Actions. You can use YouTube videos like maybe this one you're watching for the usual asynchronous interaction. But there's also a committee which is responsible for making the decisions of the project, setting the rules, how we interact, who can do what on the repository, is responsible for marketing and advertising for the project, and reporting upstream to the general Linux Foundation Energy Technical Advisory Committee. So, and this committee so far has 5 members. 4 of them are here, so we have a valid quorum. We can do a vote. And there's 2 new members who want to join us, and the current committee is able to elect them. And I think we should, well, they should present themselves before we do the voting. So, Holger, you are the first one.
Yes, hello. So I brought 2 slides today. The first one is actually about me and why I think I would be a good choice to be on the TSC. And the second one is about my company, Qwello, and why it would be good to have a representative of Qwello in the TSC. So I hope this is then like a compelling package that gives me a chance to being elected. So hi, my name is Holger. I'm the CTO at Qwello. I will talk about Qwello in the next slide. I actually brought my ego slide here, I call it. So below you see in orange my education and my professional career. I start with my physics diploma that actually I mentioned mostly because I actually studied together with Cornelius Clausen, the CTO of PIONIX. We were in the same year, and we did a lot of math and physics homework together in the first few semesters.
So small world.
That's right, yeah. We actually lost track of each other for 10 years and just reconnected over EVerest again. After that, I went and got a PhD in mechanical engineering, and then my first job was as a software engineer at Google. I left there as a staff software engineer to be the site lead and site founder of Lyft Germany. So I built self-driving cars here with a small team in Munich, and the first international office for Lyft. And since a couple of years now, I'm the CTO at Qwello, which I will talk about in a moment. I'm actually well versed in open source. I have started and contributed and led 3 main open source projects during my career so far. So I started doing an open source video game, Whitelands, when I was very young, early before my studies. And this has been continuously in development since now. And I'm not leading that anymore, but it's still going very strong. I'm also the author of Altisnips, which is a Vim plugin with 7,300 GitHub stars, which I'm still developing whenever I find free time. And at Google, I was one of the co-founders of a project called Cartographer, which was a simultaneous localization and mapping system for robots, which Google decided to open source in 2016, which also found its niche and sits also at like 6,700 GitHub stars. So I would be delighted to contribute my open source experience to the EVerest project. Next slide, please. Okay, and who's Qwello? So Qwello is the company I'm currently the CTO at, and what we are is we are a charge point operator. We only have AC charge points at this point in time. We are active in 6 countries and right around 80 employees currently. And our main target area is the inner cities primarily. We built our own hardware. So here on the right, I have a photo of how one of our poles look like. And we also have our own app. Our largest deployment right now is in Sweden. To be precise, we actually the market league in Stockholm when you count the numbers of sessions and the numbers of charging poles. And we are really serious about EVerest. We actually want to run all of our chargers on EVerest in 2024. Yeah, and that's why we think we should also be there and steer a bit the direction of EVerest.
Thank you, Holger. Very much appreciated. So let's continue with Shankari. Nice to have you here, Shankari.
Hello. So I originally had a slide that just focused on the project that I'm working for, but then I saw Holger's slides and I was like, well, I should also have one that talks about my background. So I'm the principal software architect for the standards and reliability pillar in the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. And in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about what that is. I typically work at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. I'm on assignment for a year to work on this. You can look me up on GitHub, LinkedIn, or email. I have worked in computer science for my entire fairly long professional career. I have a BE in computer engineering and MS in computer science. And then I went and worked in the tech industry for 12 years. And then I went and got a PhD from UC Berkeley, and I'm now at EVerest. And I put in my theses here just to sort of highlight that I've worked, over this time in all kinds of weird little areas. So I've done embedded systems, I've done cloud work, I've done distributed systems. So until I did the PhD, all my work was closed source. But during the PhD, I did an open source project, which is what I'm continuing to work on in my NREL hat. So I do have experience at least starting an open source project from scratch and trying to get people involved and so on and so forth. And I didn't want to put in a lot of other things in here because it would take over the slide. But I recently was awarded the Colorado Governor's Award for High Impact Research for my work on the open source project that I do at EVerest. And some of my work actually made it to the press. So there was this, I figured something out when I was a grad student. I put it up as a blog post, and then the AP picked it up, and there was a bunch of press around it, and there were people calling me up to do interviews, which was an extremely weird experience. Anyway, so next slide, please. So what is the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation? So the US government has a separate Department of Transportation and a separate Department of Energy. And what the Joint Office is a joint department that has people from energy and transportation, and that is focused on transportation decarbonization in the United States. So the US is building out its charging infrastructure in a big way next year. And so there is a CFR 680, which has the regulations that you have to follow to do that. And NEVI and CFI are the funding mechanisms by which the charging network will be at least seeded, we hope, and potentially built out even more in future years. And before we go out and build the infrastructure, we want to make sure that it is interoperable and robust, because if we get it wrong now, we're going to have a bunch of charge stations out there that don't work, and our decarbonization is going to hit a giant roadblock. And so there are several efforts related to this. There's people working on cybersecurity, people working on hardware, and so on and so forth. But this particular group that I'm the principal architect for is really focused on the software implementation. We work closely with the people who work on the hardware. PIONIX actually shipped some of the boards over to one of our partners so they can test it out. But our focus is software at this point. And what we want to do is to come up with a robust, interoperable software reference implementation that we can encourage the US industry to adopt, so that we will be interoperable by default, and we can, because we can see what the implementation looks like, we can make sure that it's reliable and robust. So our plan is to have these containers for EVSC and CSMS, figure out a way to hook all of them up, and then test them and test simulated failures, basically do some level of chaos engineering with it, so that we can iron out at least all of the software bugs ahead of time. Next slide, please. So we were very excited to find EVerest because it seemed like a really robust solution for at least the EVSE piece. Especially for such a strong industry focus, it's really good to have a strong community around the project so that we are not building something that nobody's going to use. And so we, evaluated EVerest. I contributed this little demo that we built with the containers talking to each other. And we were really impressed with the modular architecture and the ability to expand it, because we will likely need to make some changes for the North American context. But it's a great place to start from. So right now we're working on the sort of technical evaluation through creating demos. We're interviewing North American stakeholders to identify where the gaps are between what EVerest already has and what they want. And then we plan to contribute code to fill out sort of the North American pieces, if there are any. There are, so far, I think it's primarily going to be documentation and sort of ease of use, but we'll come up with a full list and share it with you and let you know what we plan to build. But our focus is really going to be on CFR 680 because that's what we're funded to do. And then what we want to do is to actually work closely with US-based early adopters to integrate the stack into their products and figure out, this is going to be white glove treatment. We talk to them every week. We figure out what's missing. We build that, and then they test it, and then we build that, and then we test it. So it's going to be very high engagement, high touch. But at the end of it, we hope to be able to show that this will work in the US, and it's out there in the field, and it's working. And then, we can recommend it as the reference solution and tell people to use it and so on. And we also hope that as the adoption grows in the US, we will be able to bring in more of these early adopters to join the community. So again, Joint Office has its own view, but Ford or GM may have their own view. And I think it would be helpful to have a common area where there can be technical collaboration, even if at the business level they're competitors.
Awesome. Thank you, Shankari. By the way, I even heard that some from our high-profile US customers told us that you have been talking to them. So it's funny if you also see each other on the other side sometimes.
Yes, yeah, that would be cool.
Awesome. So, thanks
we
a
will
lot.
probably also be at CharIn, just FYI, and we'll hope to meet up with you then as well.
Thank you. And yeah, okay, there's also one more thing. So when we go to the next events plan, so we plan with maybe you and some of the other US stakeholders and on some of the other national labs, US-based EVerest Summit / Testival in next summer. So this is also on the roadmap agenda. Awesome, thanks a lot. So we have the current committee members. That's me, Cornelius, who is not here today. He is testing on the CharIn. Kai, Anton, and Moritz. We are the four who can do the vote today. So let's start. So let's start with Holger, Rapp. Everyone in favor of this? Aye.
Yes, I'm in favor of it.
Same here.
Yeah, me as well.
I approve.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome, Holger. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
The same on Shankari. So who's in favor? Let me start. I am.
I am also in favor.
I'm also in favor.
I'm also in favor.
So Awesome. So welcome, Shankari. Awesome
I guess
to have you here.
I can vote now too, so I'm also in favor.
Clear.
Technically, yes. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. Oh, that was not intentional. But Holger was slightly before you registered on this list, so that's why he came first. Awesome. Thanks a lot. So let's continue with the agenda. So what's next? Obviously, a lot is going on. You heard a lot of things already. So I mentioned there's more events coming. There's end of February. We'll do the next, we call it Open EV Charging Summit. We will do that together with a partner. Couldn't announce that yet. Stay tuned, look out what will come, and we will try to replicate this in North America, and we also try to look if we can do something like that in Asia. North America will be then maybe more towards June, and we're also looking for partners from everyone over the industry. North America, we plan to be really big, so in terms of testing with cars, testing with all EVerest-based chargers, testing with different backend systems, testing components like power meters, RFID readers, power supply. So everything when EVerest stack is connecting to. And so please be creative. It will be, let's say, 1 day of conference, 1-2 days of collaborative hacking and coding. So if we're lucky at the end of those half a week thing, we're coming out with a lot of new drivers and things. So let's see if we can make that happen, and help is always welcome. Yeah, so going to the roadmap. So there's not so much change here. I mentioned the roadmap slide we had before, like the wishes from the community. And yeah, definitely we're working on a lot of documentation. Shankari mentioned that. But in principle, the short-term priority from everyone also in the room was, yeah, let's get OCPP 2.0 ready. Let's get ISO 15118-20 ready. So that was no question around that. And there's also some details around that on the next slides. Rust support, ZVT, we mentioned with Holger and others going on. And for sure, we're always adding new hardware drivers. And some of them might be under NDA. For example, we at PIONIX have some hardware drivers. Because of weird NDAs, we can't publish even if we want to, but we're really working hard to free them up. But if you're looking for something you're missing, just give us a ping. Maybe we can help you. CharDemo, DPT, CharG, as said before, we're looking into getting that supported somewhere next year. There might be 2 different companies helping us with that, donating code. I just realized I'm missing on the slide. There's also 1 or maybe even 2 companies looking in ISO 15118-8, so wireless communication for ISO charging. Definitely missing so far, low priority, but last weeks this have been popping up quite a bit. Yeah, and evergreen topic, advanced energy management. So we have some state funding in Germany to make that happen. So we now have to make it happen. We have so awesome ideas what we want to integrate, but also so little time. Yeah, but hopefully next year we get load balancing even better. In BIT you already have, you get solar integration, and you get remote connection and price prediction. Yeah, Shankari.
I think there is actually an unmaintained open source implementation of -8, with Wi-Fi for the charging that I found. I'm happy to share if you're interested.
Yes,
awesome. Start from it at least.
Sounds good. Just maybe push it on the mailing list. I think then everyone who is working on that will be aware, and everyone out there. Remote connections, this is that you can couple different EVerests with each other. EEBus is a German protocol to connect locally at your home different renewable energy things. I think IEEE 2030.5 is kind of the US equivalent, if I got it right. OpenADI, USEF, other standards also in this direction. You see this agenda is really grid-friendly integration things happening next year. And yeah, let's see what happens else. OCPP timeline. So we have the full 1.6 implementation, as we said. OCPP 2.0 basic charging works, and now we're on the final steps of getting certification, configuration, transaction, load control, and security done. Getting all the test tool green. We will introduce in the middle also the bidirectional support from OCPP 2.1, even though it's not final yet. We see a lot of demand for this. And there's also some error code harmonization by the US National Charging Experience Consortium. That's also, we will push that in between before we finalizing all the other OCPP things. And as again, all the roadmaps are pending on community priorities. So if everyone want to pull something in, feel free. If everyone want to give something else, this is just the consensus we sense so far. But it's always changing. Timeline on ISO. So we have the full implementation in native code for DeanSpec and for the -2. And in C, C++, donated by ChargeByte and integrated by PIONIX, we had already integrated the SAE J2847-2, the bidirectional power transfer. We're currently working on getting the community edition for Joseph integrated on the EVSE side only temporarily, on the car side probably permanent, so we can run simulations. But the main goal is getting the EVSE side properly in native code. And as I said before, yeah, we have been running yesterday the first time some successful charges with that on the Testival. It's still very early alpha, yeah, but it will happen in the next weeks and months. So it's on a really, really good track. Getting that stable, and then it's all the time about bidirectional power transfer and AC and DC and stabilizing this over the next months. Upcoming events. Yes, CharIn Valencia, happening today. Tomorrow we'll be in Hockenheim on a electric mobility Testival. It's a Formula 1 racetrack in Germany. We'll be on the Chinese International Porter Expo next week, actually, starting next week. We'll be on CharIn US, and I think there are still cars missing, I heard. So if anyone, the car OEM hears this, please make it happen. Bring your testing cars there. They're looking for that. The same with Asia. I think they're even more looking for cars. It's maybe even a threat that this is not happening at all. So please register a car in Singapore for the Testival. That would be awesome. We will be there if it happens. We'll be on the CES. We'll be on the FOSDEM, which is, I think, the biggest European open source conference. We are currently orchestrating with all the other LF Energy projects to get a dev room. We'll be on the eWorld, on the Open EV Charging Summit. As I mentioned, we'll create something end of February in Germany together with a big partner I couldn't announce yet. And then North America Summit, Asia, and many more things. Last but not least, there will be a next technical steering committee in roughly a month from now. And please also join our weekly engineering calls where we do all the deep dive and heavy lifting. And one final personal note, hasn't fit in any slide. There's also currently a public voting on the Open Charge Alliance for a new board member seat. And I would be honored to present the EVerest community there. So yeah, vote for me, yay. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, looking forward to get all your interactions on the mailing list and on the next meetings. And we'll stop the recording and dive in the discussion.